Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay from Sony Alpha Lab, and what I got for you today is the Panasonic GH6. Now, obviously I normally review Sony cameras, but the GH6 caught my eye. I really wanted to check it out because, you know, it's nice to try out the competition from time to time, of course, keep fresh and relevant and stuff like that, but I really wanted to check out some of the amazing technology and engineering that the GH6 offers. I mean, it has an incredible stabilization system. The camera body itself is weather sealed and it's super rugged, has tons of hands-on physical buttons, which I like. I wanted to play with that. I also wanted to check out the autofocus system to see how it compares to Sony. And in addition to that, I really wanted to look at the color science. I wanted to see what the skin tones look like and how that compared to Sony in particular. Now, the GH6 is a hybrid camera, just like the Sony cameras, meaning it can do both photos and videos. So the Micro Four Thirds sensor is quite a bit smaller than the Sony sensor, as you can see here. So we have the APS-C crop factor sensor from Sony, and then the full frame sensor from Sony. Now, the Micro Four Thirds sensor is a 2x crop factor. So whatever number is on the lens, you pretty much need to double that, and that will give you the effective range. Now, the smaller sensor does have some advantages and some disadvantages. One of the biggest advantages of that smaller sensor is the ability to have a stabilization system that can correct for 7.5 stops. All right, so this is handheld, and I'm at 60mm on this lens, which is an effective 120mm, and this image stabilization is incredible. So if I zoom out here, now I am at 12mm, and you can see it's like rock solid. That's just remarkable. In addition to that, because the sensor is smaller, there's much less rolling shutter because the readout speeds are really fast on the sensor. Now, a downside of the smaller sensor is, you know, the pixel density. So it's not going to be quite as good in low light or super high ISO situations. In addition to that, the smaller sensor doesn't have as much depth of field play, so the backgrounds won't be quite as blurry using a similar lens when compared to a full frame camera or even the crop factor cameras from Sony. Alright guys, so I just wanted to thank BH Photo Video for sending me the GH6 with the Leica 12 to 60mm lens. I really appreciate it. Alright, so let's go over this camera body here. I just want to go around it and show you all the different buttons and features and how it works and stuff. It's amazing. And then we're going to go into the lab and I'm going to give you a demo on how the camera works, recording video and taking photos and stuff. And then I'm going to show you some real world photography and video that I got over the past few weeks using this impressive camera. So let's just get right into it, guys. All right, so going over the camera body here, the new GH6 goes for about $2,200 for just the camera body. However, if you get it with various lenses, it varies in price. So I actually got it with the 12 to 60mm f2.8 to f4 lens, which you can see here. So the camera body is amazing. It's fully weather sealed and it's built like a brick. It's extremely rigid and sturdy in the hands. It has an active cooling system in there so you can record 4K 60 indefinitely. It's also freeze proof, which is amazing. All right guys, so looking at it from the top of the camera, we have a mode dial here. Now the mode dial has a lock button on there, which is pretty sweet. Here you have your drive mode dial and various options there. You have white balance, ISO, and exposure compensation over here. You have a dial here for adjustment. You have your shutter button. Up here you have a hot shoe mount, and this thing comes off. You can just slide that off. You have your stereo microphone ports right there. You can see on the top. If I turn it a little bit, you can see them a little better. And also note, here you have a little indicator right there when you have the camera on. That'll light up. And over here you have another indicator that'll light up if you're using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And right there's a little symbol. It's a little bit hard to see, but that's where you would measure from if you need to measure for the sensor. That's where the sensor plane is. Now this button here is a quick audio button. It'll bring you right into your audio settings. And then here you have a record button, which is red, which I really like. And you have another control dial here, and the feedback on these dials is excellent, by the way. All right, so then we have the straps here for the camera, and here is the camera strap that they give you. It's a really nice strap. Good quality. So that's where you would connect that. Now looking at it, let's show you what it looks like on the front here. Now of course we have the camera cap, and right there is the sensor. So that's a Micro Four Thirds sensor. Now it's a fairly small sensor compared to the full frame sensors and even the crop factor Sony sensor. So that smaller sensor works out to a 2x crop factor. Now you have custom buttons here. You have one here and one here. You also have the lens release button. That's what this is. And you have another record button here. Now right here on the inside you have AF illuminator that'll help you focus in really dark conditions, but it's also a self-timer countdown lamp, and it'll blink when a self-timer is counting down. Now this one over here is actually a tally light. That'll light up when you're recording video. Now this right here is a flash synchronizing socket, and you can also use it with the supplied conversion cable here for timecode syncing. Alright, so looking at it from the back, you have an AF on button, so you can use that to autofocus. And here is your autofocus switch, so you can change it to different focus modes. You have single shot, you have continuous, and you have manual focus. Now if you press this button in the center, that'll bring you into your focus area modes, and I'll show you that once we turn the camera on. Now this is a little joystick that acts as a button if you push it in, but you can also move focus points around, navigate the menu with it, and so forth. And here you have a quick access menu, very similar to the function menu on the Sony cameras. Now up here you have the rear tally lamp, so that'll light up when you're recording video. And then you have another navigation dial here, which is also a 4-way button. And if you press in the center, that'll bring you into the menu. Then you have a back button here, also the garbage can, and a display button, which will change the way the screen displays. Now, when you flip this open, you can see here, this is a 3-inch, 1.84 million dot, fully articulating screen. And I like the fact that you can close it this way for armor mode, or you can close it the other way if you want to see the screen while you're doing stuff, you know what I mean? Now also, this thing kicks out like that, as you can see. This thing actually lifts out, which gives you much more versatility, and it's very easy to use when you're just holding the camera like this. I especially like that feature. Now behind that, you can see the intake for the heat system, the active cooling system. That is the intake, so you don't want to block that. Even when you have the camera like this though, it is still open. So you can see air can get in there. But also note on this side, you have the exhaust. So this is the exhaust vent for the active cooling system, so you don't want to block either of those. Now here's the viewfinder. Now this is a 3.68 million dot electronic viewfinder, and it looks really good. And I also got to say the screen looks really good too, way better than my Sony cameras for sure. It looks more like a like my iPad screen or something compared to a cheaper viewfinder, which, like I said, the Sony screens don't look that good, especially compared to this one. Also on the viewfinder here, this is the sensor for the viewfinder. So when you put your eye up to it, or if you cover this, the camera will automatically switch to the electronic viewfinder. But also note, you have a button right here, live viewfinder. So if you press this, it'll toggle between the viewfinder and the screen, so you can set it manually by using this button. Really like that feature as well. Now here you have a lock feature. If you lock that, and by the way, you can configure exactly what gets locked, but when you lock that, by default all these buttons and stuff won't do anything. And also note the playback button there. That's how you get into the playback menu right here. You just press that button. Looking at it from over here, you have another option here for a remote. See that hole there? That's for the remote control. And then if you slide this down and cock it out, just like the Sony cameras for the most part, in here you have your memory cards. Now you have a CF Express card slot, and you have a UHS-2 SD card slot. They're not dual slots like the Sony cameras. This is CF Express only. And these lights will light up when you're writing to the cards, and the camera will also warn you if you open this door while it's writing to the cards, just to let you know, don't pull the memory card out because I'm still writing to it. And just a very good design in my opinion. Now looking at it from the bottom quick, I just wanted to show you have here to open the battery door. It's got a lock lever. You also have the tripod mount with the little hole there, which is nice for those tripod plates. It won't spin on you. Now if you unlock this and open it up, this is where the battery goes. Now I already have the battery in there, but here's a look at the battery. Now the battery life really isn't that great on this camera compared to my Sony a7C, but compared to my Sony a6400, which I'm recording right now above, the battery life is definitely better. But the FZ100 batteries on the larger, newer Sony cameras do offer better battery life than this one. But you just slide that in like that, and it locks into place. You can see the little lock lever there. Now also note there's this little port door. So you can open that up like that, and that's how you can put a battery blank in there and have the cord come out and still have the door shut. So that's a very nice feature that's just built in. Now also, looking at it from the side here, we have the microphone port up there like that. And then right below that, we have the headphone, and these are very nice rubberized doors to help with that weather sealing. And then here you have the USB-C port, which is a 3.2 by the way, and then you have an HDMI. Now supposedly you're going to be able to hook up an SSD solid state hard drive to this at some point via a firmware update, but I haven't heard anything about that in the past week or so, so stay tuned for that as firmware updates come out. All right, one other thing I wanted to show you is the Doppler adjustment, whatever that's called. And then also underneath right here is a little lock lever. And if you push that down, you could then pop the viewfinder piece off. I'll show you. Like that, see? And that's it. That's very helpful if you want to clean that little lens, because dust gets in there and it's hard to clean it when this is on. So you can take that off very simply with this little lock lever here. You can see it, how it works right there. All right, so again, looking at it from the front here. So I'm just going to take that off. So again, you can see the sensor. Now there's the contact points right there, and those connect to the lens. And if you look at the lens here, I'll show you. You see the contact points right there? And then also notice this little lock pin. If you press this down, you can see that lock pin moving. That's what locks the lens on. And there's a red dot right there. So you need to line up the red dot on the lens to the red dot on the bayonet, like so. And then if you turn, listen for the click. That's the click, so that's the lock. And if you want to take it off, you just press that and then turn the lens and it'll come off. And now it's locked into place. So looking at the lens, this lens actually has optical stabilization as well. So you can turn that on and off here. And then it has the autofocus switch here, so you can switch it to autofocus or manual focus. And if you have the lens set to manual focus, the camera will be in manual focus. So it like overrides it, just so you know. Now again, I really like this lens, the 12-60. It works out to an effective 24 to 120 millimeter lens. Also note this lens hood. It's got a nice button on there, which I really like to take the lens hood off. It's so much easier when it has a button. It just locks on, and then it's got a pinch style. But anyways, in case you're unaware and you're new to cameras and stuff, you zoom the lens by turning the zoom ring, as you can see right here. And then this would be your manual focus ring. And by the way, this focus ring feels like butter. The zoom feels really good too. Has a nice throw to it. Yeah, very nice. Really high quality package here. And with this lens, it goes for about $2,800, by the way. All right, guys, let's turn this beast on, shall we? All right, so here is the on-off switch here, and you just toggle that like so, and the camera turns on. Note how the light lit up there, green, to let you know the camera's on. And looking at it from the back, this is what it looks like. Now, I already have this camera set up, guys, so how I like to use it. So I'm gonna go into the menu system here by hitting this button. Go into the menu, and I'm gonna hit reset. And that's in the tools. You can see it looks like a spanner wrench, and then the gear, reset. And I'm gonna put the camera back to factory default, how it came out of the box. All right, so the first thing you're gonna wanna do though is to set the date and time and stuff. So if you go into the menu and you scroll down, and let me just show you how this menu works really quick. You have these main tabs on the left side, and if you scroll, and they change depending on what mode you're in. So I'm in movie mode right now. So just so you're aware. So now if I scroll down to the spanner and you go down, you have clock set. So I'm just gonna go in there and I'm gonna set the time. So I guess it didn't reset that, but this is where you would go to set the time, guys. I'm just gonna hit back. All right, so here we are. So now again, looking at the screen, if you hit this display button, it'll change the way the screen looks, like so. But notice this display mode, it'll give you pretty much a preview of all the options, and you can just touch on any of them to go in there. Photo style, if you touch it, you can go in there and change it. So this touch screen works like all the time, unlike the Sony cameras, which is quite frustrating. The newer Sony cameras do work in more ways, but this one definitely does work a little bit better, I find. And I just love how you can go in there and just change your settings. And here's all the different record qualities for this particular format. Well, let me just hit the display again to bring it back. Now I shut the display off. Now here is the default look. Now if I hit the Q button, this is very similar to the function menu on the Sony cameras. So you can go in here and you can change some of the key settings, for example. Now I wouldn't, if I'm using video mode, I would want it in manual mode. So notice here how it's telling you need to turn the dial. This dial here on the thumb dial, I can switch which mode I want. And I like to use manual mode for video. So I'm gonna select that. Now I can go over here to MP4 and I could also change that format. See, you got MP4, Move, and ProRes. And the formats on the right here are gonna change, like your options are gonna change depending on which one of these modes you're in. So for example, if I go in here and then I select the modes, those are all the options for MP4. Now, if I go in here and change it to move, now here's all the options for .move, and you can see, keep scrolling to the right, there's a ton of them. It's incredible. Some of these formats do require the CF Express card if you want to use them, the really high bitrate formats. So if I go to ProRes now and then go over to the right, you only have 4 options for ProRes. And that's how you would go about changing that. And again, you could navigate with this thumb thing, or you could use this. You could turn the dial like this, or you could just touch the screen. Like there's so many ways to configure this thing. It's so easy to just dial in and adjust settings in the menu. I'm so impressed. Now while I'm doing that, let me just show you what the focus menu looks like here. If you go in there, you have on the top all your different autofocus modes, and a few of them are grayed out. It depends on what mode you're in and what lens you're using and stuff like that. So if I hit up, you could see here how it says AF detection on off, and what it's telling you is you can hit up and it'll change that. So now I have human detection selected, and now I have it turned off. So let me go back. I'm going to go to full area mode and just go up and down. See that? But notice here, if I go down to this option, you can select human, face eye, face eye, or animal human. So I've been using it on face eye mode for the most part, and it works really well.
Daddy, look at, I got the door for you.
Oh yeah.
You know what? I'll get the door for you even better.
I appreciate it, Chase. Thanks.
Ow, I locked the door!
So I'm going to have it set to that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the AF mode area here, and notice how it says AF area. You can actually hit the down button, and you could then change the area, and you can change the size of it by turning this wheel. Now if I go back and I go to AF area, notice what the box looks like. It's fairly small, so I could move the box around using this, and you can also change the size of it using that. You could have it set to the right side of the screen, left side of the screen, and so forth. In general, I tend to use zone or full when I'm using with facial recognition and stuff like that. And then over here you have tracking. All right, so I'm just going to hit the quick menu here, and I'm going to change back to the move option. Then I'm going to go over to the formats. There are so many formats, guys. It is incredible. So I want the 4K 24p 422. So this is the higher bitrate version, and here's the lower bitrate version. So they're the same format pretty much, just different bit rates. So I'm just going to set it to this one for now. I'm going to leave it there on that option, like so. And now if I turn the camera like this and I hit record, it's going to start recording. And you could now see the tally light on the back is lit up, and there's a tally light on the front is lit up, like so. And you can see on the back there's just a red dot here, letting you know that it's recording as well. And then you have your focus area, and you could just touch around the screen if you want to focus. And then you can cancel it by hitting that. I mean, this is super powerful. You could move the focus around using this knob here, and then you just hit the center button here to apply it. So I'm just going to stop recording. I'm going to press the front button this time. Now, let me switch it to photography mode. So I'm in aperture priority mode now. And now what I'm going to do, oh, and by the way, if I just hit record, it will record in aperture priority mode. It'll just be automatic video. You won't be able to change anything. It's like P mode pretty much when recording video in the other modes. So you really do want to use movie mode and then change your exposure mode within movie mode. But anyways, I'm in photography mode now. And if I press the shutter button halfway, it's focusing. So you can see there it's kind of blurry because it's focusing on the top of the camera, but I'm just focusing and I'm taking the photo. So now, if I hit the playback button here, there's the photo I just took. And you could zoom in and out by using the dials here. See, I'm zooming in like that. And the other dial you can use if you want to switch between photos, like so. Very easy to use as well. And you can keep zooming out into calendar view. Very similar to the Sony cameras in this regard, how this is set up. All right, so up here again, you have your drive modes. Now right now it's set to single shot. If you go into the Q menu and you look down here, that's the drive mode right there as well. So if I change it to this option, notice how it's set to burst shot, one setting. And now you have all these different burst shot modes. You could just scroll through using this. Look at this, 20 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 75 frames per second you can do. And then if you move to the next option, that's the number 2, you can go into the Q menu, and that's burst shot setting 2. Now, the next option here on the top of the dial, that is the super high resolution mode option. And that's an amazing feature. It'll actually take a bunch of photos, blend them all together, and give you like a 100 megapixel quality version of an image. And super powerful feature. You could actually do it handheld, and that option is in the menu to turn that on if you want to do it handheld. By default, you do want to use a tripod for that feature though. All right, so up here on the dial, now I am in time-lapse mode. If you look at the back of the screen there, those are the time-lapse settings that are currently set. And hit the Q button. If you go in here, look, you got all your different time-lapse options. Start time, how many images you're going to take, and so forth. And the last option here is the self-timer. So if you go in here, you can then adjust the self-timer by turning this dial like so. So you can get 10 seconds, 3 pictures, 10 seconds, 1 picture. So that's how that works, and that's the mode dial. So what I like about this camera system is everything is set up so you can do it manually pretty much. Now, of course, it has the menus and stuff like that, but overall, the way the buttons are all configured, you can pretty much have the camera set how you want and then just change settings manually so you don't have to go into the menu system, which is, I just love that. I love cameras with lots of buttons and dials on it because it's just so much better to hit a button than go into the menu to change a setting. So overall experience with this camera is just remarkable in that regard. I absolutely love it, the way the hands-on usability factor goes with this camera, and I'm having an absolute blast. I really like the way the grip feels as well. It's got an excellent grip. It is quite heavy. It's definitely significantly heavier than I expected. All right, so here we are in the lab scene, and I have the GH6 right here. Now, I have it in aperture priority mode, and if I just hit the shutter button here, you could see it's autofocusing. Now, let me go over the autofocus settings. Now, if you look here, I have it in autofocus single mode. So it's single shot mode. So if I go into the autofocus area settings here, notice how we have all these different options. Now we have pinpoint. Pinpoint is not available when you're using autofocus continuous mode. So continuous mode is what you would be using in video and if you were tracking moving subjects. Single shot is more for just taking single shots. You could use it for portraits, landscapes, things like that. But let me just show you how you can change the area. See how there's this little button? You can click that, and now you can change that pinpoint focus area to wherever you want, and you can change the size of it as well. So I'm just going to scroll down and put that on the quarter. And then I'll hit the center button here to set it. And when I hit the autofocus button, it's going to focus on just that one pinpoint spot. Now if I go back and I change that to zone, for example, I could then focus. I could change the size of it if I hit the down arrow. I can make it smaller, move it over there to the quarter like so. And now it's going to focus on the quarter, as you can see. And the focus is extremely snappy on the GH6 when in photography mode. It's very, very good. All right, so now watch what happens when I put it into continuous focus mode. I'll just go back in there and notice how that's grayed out like I was showing you a second ago. So if I switch it to manual focus mode, notice how we have this color overlay. So it's showing us the contrast. Now, if you just turn the focus ring, it's going to punch in like that. You see how it gives you a picture-in-picture preview? And also, if you turn this dial on the back, it'll zoom in more. You could adjust it with these dials. So you could do that, zoom in, and then now just fine-tune the focus, and you can see that overlay, the focus peaking overlay there coming up on the blue, and that's how you can use manual focus. If you hit the shutter button, it'll reset it, and it's taking multiple shots because of the shooting mode that I currently have set, which is bracketing. So let me go into the menu here, go into photo, and notice how I have bracketing turned on. So I was taking some HDR photos at the Basher Kill, and I turned bracketing on. So let me just turn that off by scrolling down, turn that off like so. All right, so now bracketing's off. So now if I take a photo, it'll just take one shot. So one other thing I wanted to show you when in manual focus mode is how there's an actual autofocus button here. Notice how on the bottom right it says AF. So at any time you can hit that and it will try to autofocus for you, which is pretty cool. So it'll actually try to get you closer to where you want to be when manual focusing. And then of course you just turn the manual focus and you can fine tune it. In addition, if you hit this button here, it'll turn the whole screen into the preview, the zoom in preview, so you could get a better look at the entire scene as opposed to just this punch out view, which is nice. You know, they both have their advantages. So, and then you can just hit exit and you're back to the full screen there. Now I could also set the camera to self timer, which would be a better option to ensure a steady camera. So that's what you would want to do landscape photo wise. I always want to set that self timer so the camera is super stable. So if I go back to continuous now and switch the camera to video mode, now I'm in video mode and it's default on continuous autofocus. So if I hit record, it should continuously focus on that quarter. Now I've noticed that it doesn't really work that good compared to the Sony cameras, but it does work decent. Now it does offer this tracking feature, but like I said, I haven't really had the best luck using the tracking feature either. Let me just stop recording. And if I go in here and I go over to the tracking option, you can change the AF area. And right now the AF area is set to that quarter. So if I hit record, it should track the quarter, but you can see how it's kind of struggling. It is a high contrast item. So it's following it, but then it loses it there. See that? But when you're tracking faces, it does work quite well. I tested it on faces and it was really impressive how good it worked. What I really wanted to test here was the autofocus on my face. Now I have the facial tracking on and everything, and it looks like it's working excellent on my screen. I could see it tracking my face, and I'm just walking around. I'm moving the camera in and out, backlighting with the windows above, and so forth. And like I said, you could see for yourself that this is definitely working really well. So I'm just going to turn the tracking off here. Go in there, and I'm just going to switch to full area now. So now I'm in full area, and let me just zoom out a little bit so we could see a little bit more of the background. Now watch this. I'm going to hit record, and you can just touch around the screen to change the focus. It's awesome. I'm going to switch to the background, and the background's really dark. It found some contrast there with that window in my bedroom back there. And now I'm going to switch back to the dollar bill, and there you have it. Now, notice the focus transition speed there. You can change that as well in the menu system. So if you go into the menu, I just got to stop recording here. Go into the menu. If you scroll down to autofocus here, check this out. If you go into AF custom settings, right now it's turned off. If you go in there and you turn it on, and then you go in there and you hit set, you could now adjust your autofocus speed and autofocus sensitivity, and look at how much range you have there. So you could just dial that in. So I could change the AF speed and slow it way down, like that, for example. And now, when I'm recording, if I click on the background, it's going to much more slowly change focus. And you know, you could see it does pulse that little bit. It's this contrast AF just doesn't work quite as good as the Sony cameras. Let me just stop recording and go back into photography mode. And also note how the menu changes when you're in the different modes. Now you can see the camera is on the top. So if I go over and go up to the camera, then I can go into autofocus. So in autofocus, you have AF custom settings right there. You have 4 different sets. So the first one is default. The second one is if you're tracking a subject that's moving from like left to right or whatever, you would use that option. And notice how the sensitivity options and stuff are changing. And then you have 3, this is for tracking moving subjects that are, you know, running around randomly, like a sports team in particular with lots of players. And then 4, this would be the option I would use for if I was trying to track my kids and they were coming towards me on their bicycle or something like that. Set 4 would be the option I would go for. And you could change these settings as well, as you can see. So the customization is absolutely remarkable on this camera. And just because I'm hitting the shutter button here to focus, that's just my habit. I tend to work that way, but a lot of people use the back button focus, and you can just hit this button to focus as well, as you can see right here. Now let me just show you when I change it into burst mode, how it'll take multiple photos. See that? So I have it set to about medium right now. I believe, yes, if you scroll over here, that is the burst mode option. And you can see I have it set to M. You could change that by turning this dial. And you could set it to 20 frames per second, for example. Watch this. So that's how that works. Now, again, if I go into the super high resolution mode, that's what this is. And now watch this. So it just took a bunch of shots and it's creating the high resolution image. And there you have it. All right, so another cool feature I wanted to show you is you can just hit this audio button on the top, the picture with the mic there, and it'll bring you right into these audio settings. And you can just touch around the screen to change the settings, just like in all the other modes. And of course, you can hit the back button to go back. And it just, I just love that, how you can just hit a button and boom, you're right at all the settings. All right, so another thing I wanted to show you was white balance. Now, if I hit the white balance button, it'll bring you into the white balance area. Now, you can turn the wheel to change the different white balances if you want, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to custom set my Kelvin white balance temperature because my studio lights are calibrated to 5000 K. So what you can do is you can go in there, and if you hit the up arrow, you can adjust the white balance temperature here. Notice how if I go up and down with the arrows, I'm changing the color temperature. You can see on the top right there. So you just dial it into 5000, then you can hit set, like so. Now, if I hit the down button, that'll bring you into this area where you can, further refine the white balance if you so choose. So I just love how that works with these push buttons. Same thing with the ISO. You can hit the ISO there, and then you can go in and you can change it how you want. Now, another mode on this camera, if you're like a beginner and you're just getting started, is the full auto mode. And it's automatic and it has like a little eye next to it. And if you go into that mode, the camera will just do all the thinking for you. Very similar to the Sony cameras when you're using full auto. And again, when I go into the quick menu here, just like the Sony cameras when in full auto, you can see how all that stuff's grayed out. So now you're very limited as to what you can change because the camera's doing all the thinking for you. So also in the quick menu here, you have the photo styles, and that is in there by default in both photo and video mode. So if you notice here on the bottom, you have what's called photo styles. Now here's standard, vivid. Now these are called different modes and different cameras. On the Sony cameras, you have creative styles, and then you also have picture profiles. Now in here is kind of where the picture profiles would be if you're looking at it from a Sony perspective. So if you keep scrolling over to the right, you have monochrome, all sorts of cool stuff like that you guys should check out. And then in here, you have some of the picture profiles for video. Now it's called Cine-like D2. You have Cine-like V2. So then you have Rec 709, you have your Vlog, you have your hybrid log gamma, and then you have my photo style. So you can go in here and you can create your own profiles. So that's where you would find that type of stuff. All right, so here we are in Adobe Lightroom, and I just wanted to go over a couple of the lab testing photos that I took here. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like using that Leica lens at 12 millimeter versus 60 millimeter. So this is 12 millimeter, which is an effective 24 millimeter when you factor in the crop factor. And this is an effective 120 millimeter, which is 60 millimeter on the lens. So that is quite a bit of range you can see here, with just that one lens. Now moving on here, here's 50 millimeter, here's 40 millimeter. And now I'm gonna go through and show you the different ISO levels here. So this is ISO 100. And just notice the detail on the coins and the dollar bill in particular as we go down. So here's 200. I'm not noticing loss of detail yet. Here's 800. ISO 800. I'm still not noticing any loss of detail, which is remarkable. So at ISO 1600, I am starting to see just a little bit of that like plasticky look on the coins. Now, keep in mind, this is a JPEG file. The RAW files are not ready for Lightroom yet. Lightroom doesn't have the RAW file Kodak or whatever you call it. So I just shot JPEG for these test photos. So keep that in mind. There is some noise reduction going on here. But anyway, still looks incredibly good in my opinion. Now here's ISO 3200. The dollar bill looks absolutely fantastic still, but the quarters again are starting to look that little bit plasticky. Also, you can see a little bit of the detail going away on the paper of the crayons. But again, overall, very impressed with the results of this smaller sensor and high ISO abilities. Look at ISO 6400. I am definitely starting to see a little bit of degradation in the dollar bill here, but still really well controlled in my opinion. Same thing, 12,800. Really well controlled. You could still see all the little tiny details in the dollar bill. So the resolving power is still there. But again, on the coins, you can see that little bit of mud type look. Now, at 25,600, the dollar bill kind of goes to garbage here. You can see from 12,800 to 25,000 how the detail on the dollar bill really just goes away. And same thing with the coins. So with that being said, I would say all the way to 12,800 is usable on this sensor, depending on what you're doing. As you can see here, when I zoom out, it looks excellent still. So again, depending on your needs, I would set the auto ISO maximum to 12,800 if I was using the camera. But again, that's just my personal preference in regards to what I think of the noise. So also note the background separation you can get here. So I'm focused on the coin here, and you can see the bokeh balls are looking pretty good. So you can get some pretty good separation at 60mm f4 in the lab testing scene, as you can see here. Now focusing on the crayons versus the coin, you can see that depth of field play. Now it's not the same as what you would get on a full frame camera or even a crop factor camera. And here's just another look, so you can see the bokeh ball rendering, which looks really good. Now here's just a quick test shot with the Olympus 7 to 14mm f2.8 lens, and I just wanted you to see what 7mm looks like in the lab versus 14mm. All right, so let's move on to some real world photos now. And here we are looking at the real world. Now here I was just shooting down on Jace's tire on his mountain bike here, and you can see the detail looks really good, and that the background rendering here looks really good as well. You get that nice depth of field play. Now here's just one of Jace's little pedal cart thing, and you can see again, looks pretty good. The background separation is not bad. I was shooting at f3.2 here. So again, you know, the foreground to background sharpness is nowhere near the same as when you're using a full frame lens in a similar situation. But a lot of people do prefer this because you do get a more sharp look. So it does seem like sometimes you're getting sharper images, but it's just a larger depth of field, really. It's a really cool e-bike, by the way. Having some fun riding this thing around. Here's one of Jace. Now, I just wanted to show you the skin tones here because I was very impressed with the color science of this Panasonic GH6. Those skin tones look excellent right off the camera. This looks better than Sony does, in my opinion, as far as the skin tones go straight off the camera. So excellent job, Panasonic. Here's just a picture of one of those cool wood flags I got on my wall. Now, here's just an image down in Rock Hill. They got these metal sculptures made by this guy, Zach Max. Here's another one here, just so you can see that depth of field play, focused on the guitar itself. Now here is the Resorts World Casino, which is up in Monticello, New York, and it's a really cool looking building. Now check out this cool reflection shot. This is at 24mm, using that Leica lens again, and I did do just a little bit of editing to this. You can see I added a little bit of saturation and a little bit of a vignette to help draw that eye in. Now here we're over at the Green Bridge. I love the Green Bridge. I go down there from time to time, test cameras and stuff. Just took a couple of snapshots here so you can see what the bridge itself looks like. And here it is. Here's the water. And this one I edited a little bit here in Lightroom. Now this is a JPEG, so I didn't go too far, but I did jack up the vibrance quite a bit. As you can see here, probably went a little bit too far in the blue on the sky there, but I thought it looked pretty cool. And here's just another one. This one looks a little more natural. And here's a unedited straight off the camera, and here's just with some Lightroom adjustments. And here's just another one zoomed in at 60mm looking down river a bit. I was hanging out with my brother the other day, and we were just enjoying ourselves a little bit, so I took a couple of snapshots while I was there. Now, as far as the autofocus goes, here's Charlie, and I wasn't too sure how the lens was going to hold up, but I did have it in, animal mode there, so it was recognizing the animal, and it did a pretty good job. Now, the dog obviously is moving a lot. Shutter speed was not quite fast enough. I had it at 1/60th of a second, but it still came out very good. Now, it didn't focus 100% perfect on the eyes. It did focus on the fur here, but the dog was moving quite a bit. Now, here's another one. I just pulled back a little bit to get a little further away from the dog's face, and this one came out a little bit better on the focus as far as the eyes being sharp. Here's another one of a beer can. I was just holding it in my hand, so you can see just that incredible color, clarity, depth of field play, detail, sharpness. So you can see here at 60 millimeter, I got as close as I could to the reflector, and this is killer background separation. This almost looks like a full frame camera. So you can exploit the depth of field, depending on the lens, distance to subject, and things like that. Now here's just one of Jace outside, harsh lighting conditions, and you can see here, it did an excellent job. But again, just shooting photography, this is just what you get straight off the camera. Now, here's one where I put it in high resolution mode. So let me show you what it looks like. This is regular resolution, and if I hit the I key here in Lightroom, it'll change so you can see right up here, you can see the resolution data. So watch what happens when I go to the next image. See how it says 11,000 instead of 5,000? So this is the large high megapixel version. So if I zoom in here, you can see the detail is incredible. You can see the little mud flakes and stuff like that on the down tube. So now if I go back to the other one, this is just a regular JPEG, which is just 25 megapixels. So look at the difference in detail. Let me just go to the top of the bike so you can see it. So that's a regular shot, and this is the high resolution mode. Now, I also went down to the Basher Kill to get some photos. I love going down there. And here's just a JPEG straight off the camera. And here is an HDR. So I actually had the camera set up in bracketing mode, and I was taking one EV exposure with 5 separate shots. And I did this so I can create HDRs. And this is an HDR photo right here. So this is just a single JPEG. This is an HDR photo. Now, I did use JPEGs to create the HDR, which I normally never do. But again, my computer is not supporting these RAW files yet. And I just wanted to get some good shots. So I just kept it in JPEG mode, took the 5 frames, and still created this really high quality HDR. It looks pretty darn good, even though I use JPEGs. Here's just another one. And here's what one of the JPEGs looks like, which looks really good actually. And here's the HDR. So there's not too much of a difference on this shot. Now here's another one. This one looks pretty dreamy. It's an HDR. And here's the last one. And this one I went pretty far with the editing here, but it looks really good. And if I zoom in, you can see the detail. All right, guys, so after using the Panasonic GH6 for about 3 weeks now, I can say with confidence the Panasonic system is awesome. Now, the autofocus definitely does not work as good as Sony. So if you're an autofocus user and you need to track moving subjects, you want to record video, and you don't want to use manual focus, then I would still recommend going with the Sony camera system over the Panasonic camera system. Just from my perspective, it is definitely better, especially focus transitions, things like that. You get a much more cinematic effect using autofocus on the Sony system. Now, more professional video users are going to be using manual focus, and they're going to be using focus rigs and things like that. So for users like that, the Panasonic is a really great option because the camera itself is fairly small, lightweight, and the video tools built in are quite versatile, like the waveform, vector scopes, things like that. It's a very pro-oriented camera system as far as video goes in particular. It's more geared towards manual focus users though, clearly, because they don't have phase detection built into the sensor. Now, when taking photos, the autofocus system works great. It's super snappy. It focuses incredibly fast. So the contrast AF is really quick in photography mode. Tracking moving subjects, it actually worked okay using it on my kids and the dogs and stuff, but again, not as good as the Sony camera system. So for high speed moving subjects, the Panasonic GH6 is not the greatest option out there. Now, as far as usability goes, the GH6 is one of the best cameras I've ever used. The usability factor is off the charts. All the hands-on controls work amazing. You have a push button to pretty much every feature you need, so you don't have to go digging in the menus to find stuff. I particularly like that. I like a hands-on camera experience. Now that's coming from somebody that prefers Sony cameras, which don't have the best hands-on experience, honestly, but their technology is so much better in my opinion. As far as the sensors go and stuff like that, Sony's been ahead of the curve for so many years. That's why I was an early adopter way back. The Sony Nex6, for example, was the first camera that I actually purchased that was a Sony camera. And even back then, the autofocus system was incredible. It was actually better than the GH6 right now even, which is kind of hard to believe because that was so long ago. But Sony adopted the phase detection, autofocus system. They embed those sensors into the actual image sensor, and Panasonic doesn't seem to want to do that. Now, Panasonic's going their own route. It's a smaller sensor and they're trying to get the best possible quality out of that sensor. So they're doing what they're doing. And again, they're producing a really good product that is definitely different than the Sony product line for sure. It's more geared towards video, I would say, than photo, but the camera is definitely a capable hybrid camera. The image quality, especially that high resolution mode, I was really impressed with that. The detail is phenomenal. The fact that it stitches all the photos together on camera and just pumps out a result is fantastic. Sony offers a similar feature on some of their cameras, but you have to use the Catalyst software to stitch the images together. So it's cool that it's an option, but it's just not turnkey like it is on the GH6. So the build quality of the GH6 is phenomenal, I have to say. It is really rugged. It's fully weather sealed. It can go down to 14 degrees, so it's like freeze proof. And so for somebody looking to record 4K 60 for extended periods of time, the GH6 is a great option. It also does 4K at 120. It'll also do open gate, so it'll record the entire sensor at 5.7K. Now with firmware updates, you're going to be able to plug in an SSD drive to the USB-C port, and you're going to be able to record right to the solid state drive. So that's just next level features that Sony does not offer. Now, you can, of course, record to a HDMI video recorder using the HDMI out. That's another feature. Now, you can do that on Sony cameras. Another really cool thing about the GH6 is how it has all those video formats. It has tons and tons of formats. So depending on your workflow, depending on what your client might need, if you're shooting for somebody and you're just the videographer, they might want a specific format. And the fact that the GH6 just offers all of that, you're not going to have to convert anything. So that's a very powerful feature for professional video users. I also like the higher frame rate modes the GH6 offers, which can give you killer slow motion effects, as you saw in the sample footage I was showing you earlier. So very, very good quality. So at the end of the day, I do recommend the Panasonic GH6 for those that need a very rugged camera, something that can take the heat, take the weather, somebody who wants tons of lens options, somebody that's looking for a lighter weight camera system, and also somebody that doesn't necessarily need that unbelievable autofocus technology that the Sony cameras have. So if you're a manual focus user or you're primarily just taking photos of not necessarily high-speed moving subjects, the GH6 is an excellent option. It will do the job for you, and it will do it really well. In addition, the video quality for video users, especially when using Vlog, gives you a large dynamic range, which is very impressive. Again, it's not as good as the larger sensor cameras out there, but it's still really good, as you saw in my real-world video footage. Now, as far as the color science, the GH6 is awesome. You saw on the skin tones of my son Jace in particular, it looks great right off the camera. I was so impressed with the skin tones JPEG quality that it just noticeably looked better than the Sony cameras, in my opinion. Now, I shoot RAW in general, and I can, manipulate and get the skin tones how I want if they're slightly off. But like I said, straight off the camera, the GH6 is producing phenomenal skin tones. 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up for skin tones. Stay tuned because I'm going to do another video on the GH6 where I show you how you can custom configure it to, get the most power out of it. Particularly if you're a manual mode shooter, I'm going to show you how you can set the dials up for manual mode and things like that. So stay tuned for that video. I'm also going to show off a couple accessories that you can get for the GH6 as well. All right, so if you guys felt like you got something out of this video, I would really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up and maybe even hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. So I hope you have a great rest of the day and be safe out there, all right? Take care.